Hi! Today I made the mini card cash wallet from Homemaker's Hustle. It's got a little flap and 4 card slots, and I did the zipper hack that she has included in the blog. So it's got a zipper coin pouch back here, and then it has a little swivel clip with a D-ring or a D-ring that you can use to attach right to your lanyards. I love this little pattern. It only takes about an hour to sew, and maybe a half hour to cut and interface. I did not do any cutting or interfacing on screen, but I did use wovenfuse and decovil lite inside this wallet. Decovil lite, one layer is on the exterior flap. Decovil lite on one layer is also on the side panels, and decovil lite is on the back panel. I get all those from Barb's Got Interfacing. I think that's about it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you love this. We're just going to go ahead and jump right in. I've got my card slot panel laid out right here, and I'm going to start making my lines. She has you mark on the right side of the fabric. I'm going to be marking on the wrong side of the fabric. I'm going to put a T on the left hand side, and I'll start measuring. The first line is 2 5/8 away from the end. Then 1 5/8. 2 1/8. And then we're going to repeat. I like to line my card slot panel up with my rotary mat, so I can really make sure that my lines are straight. I am pretty notorious for having some crooked card slots. And then I just like to double check that my last line is correct and that it's straight, which I have a little bit extra, so I'll just cut that right off. It was only this much, not very much at all. So now we're going to go to the iron. I have a Dritz Easy Hem, which is what I'm going to use with my folding here. It helps get nice crisp lines. So for this one, you're supposed to start at the bottom, and you're going to fold your first line from the bottom. See, I have a T here for the top, for the bottom. We're going to fold it down, wrong sides together. So why I have the easy hem is I can just line up my line with the top of my easy hem, fold it over, and I get a nice straight crisp line. And then I'll iron this. Excuse my fingernails. I did some of those color street nails with my daughters, and I use their leftovers, so I've got like a green and mermaid and then a rainbow one. So what I'm going to do next, instead of accordion folding, I'm going to skip this line and just keep doing every other line and folding it just how we did. So I'll go here and fold it over. And then we're gonna go again. Now I have a disappearing pen, so I gotta be really careful not to get the heat on the other lines, which is why I like to do it this way. Every other one kind of helps make sure that doesn't happen. And we should have one more line. Oops, I moved that. Wow, I moved that a lot. Good thing I double checked. Okay, so now we have 4 folds. Sorry about my fabric. Then we're going to go back to the bottom. And if you want, you can use your easy hem again and wrap it around like so. And then do it to all the remaining lines. Well, mine are disappearing, so that's why I said all the remaining lines, but every other line again. If you decide to do this on the right side of the fabric, I would definitely suggest only making marks on the 2 sides instead of all the way across. Just because sometimes those lines don't really go away like they should. All right, so this is my top here now. So we just fold everything up now. Then we're gonna lay it down and we'll press it again after you make sure you've got everything pretty straight. If it's very, very crucial to you, you can measure your slots and make sure that they're the same distance apart. I usually just eyeball it. I'm gonna grab 2 little hair clips that I got from More Me Know. And I got it clipped like this. Now, you usually top stitch your card slots. I don't have orange thread, and I really like the way it looks when it's not top stitched. This is not Affordable Fabrics and More fabric, so ignore that part, but it looks really, really nice, I think. Okay, so what we need next are our card slot side panels. And I'm going to tell you, I think I've had complaints about this wallet that the card slots are too wide. I just did another one. I'll show you. I just did another one this morning, and I went ahead and took a bigger seam allowance so I can get really good fitted cards in here. So I think you can cut a 1/2 inch off the side, the width of your panels here. So Somebody tell me in the comments if that makes sense once I show you what I'm gonna do to fix it. This is just cut to the regular size. What she has written in the pattern. So here's my card slots and my card slot panel. So what I'm gonna do is move my card slot panel over 1/4 of an inch and then use my 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to do that on both sides. So my card slot opening is smaller. So that makes sense then to cut off a 1/2 inch, correct? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. All right, so 1/4 inch seam allowance, but I've moved my side panel over 1/4 of an inch. So this is what it looks like once it's sewn on this side. You can baste your sides if you want. I just hold them down tight enough that it's fine. For me, I'm comfortable with it. Okay, we're going to do this on the other side. So now we've got this. And we're going to top stitch down both of the sides we just did. I'm going to use a 5 stitch length on my industrial juki 1181N. I've got Tex 70 bonded poly in my machine right now. I got that from Steve at Sewing Gold. Okay, our card slot is finished. So while we have the card slot, I'm going to go ahead and grab my D-ring tab. I'm going to fold it in half lengthwise and just finger press and bring both raw edges into the center and then fold it one more time, hiding those raw edges. So your piece should be a 1/2 inch wide. I forgot to grab my D-ring, so I'm going to grab that real quick. So I got a 1/2 inch swivel here from moremeknow.com. We're going to slide this in. Fold it over. I'm going to go down to a 4 stitch length. And I like this little smiley face right here, so I'm going to top stitch close to the D-ring, or close to the swivel clip rather. I don't know what I was going to say. Now it doesn't look like a smiley face. Okay, and then we'll take this tab, and I do an inch and an inch down is where I'll lay my tab, and I have a 1/4 inch hanging off the edge of my fabric. I'm actually going to put the smiley face side down with the right side of my fabric, so when it's complete, it'll flip out and the smiley face will be sticking out. Okay, and then we're going to baste that on. I actually like to stitch it on so it doesn't slide around the plate all over the place. And this is our finished card slots for now. For the next part, we're going to do the flap. So we need the flap exterior and the lining. We're going to need a magnet. I prefer the slim magnets for this pattern. I get mine from pursesuppliesrus on Etsy. The regular magnets will work. I do use them. I just prefer the slim ones if I have them. Okay, so this is really easy for this part. We're just going to lay our two fabrics right sides together. We're going to take a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around except for the top of our fabric. Make sure if you have directional fabric, you are leaving the top open. You can get fancy with this and curve the edges or round the whole bottom. It's totally up to you. I don't trust myself enough to round the edges without really messing everything up, so I would have like one really big rounded edge and one not really big rounded edge if I'm trying to figure out how to round it on my own. Okay, so our piece is sewn together except for on the top. I'm going to clip the corners. Make sure I don't have any overhang, which at the top I did, so I'm going to trim that down a little bit. And we're going to, excuse my scrap pile here. We're going to need our iron. We're going to stick our hands in here and turn this right sides out. I like to stick my fingers down in there and poke everything out as good as I can with my fingers. Then I have like a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook, and I'm going to use the bottom or the top, doesn't really matter. And I'm gonna finish poking out those edges, those corners. Okay, so here's that. Then we'll go ahead and give it a press. I like to try to roll my lining fabric underneath, if at all possible. So here's our pressed card slot. Sorry, I'm stuck on card slot. Flap. Then we're gonna come back and top stitch this all the way around except the top. Do not top stitch the top shut. I'm gonna go to a 5 stitch length. That's my preferred stitch length on my machine for top stitching. I use 1/8 of an inch seam allowance for my top stitch length. Okay, it's all top stitched. Then we're going to come to the back side, grab a ruler and your marking pen of whatever sorts. Your flap should be 4 inches wide. So at the 2-inch mark and 3/4 of an inch up, I'm going to make a dot. Dot is placed. I'll lay my magnet washer on top and make my marks to seam rip that. Then we're going to stick our hand inside. I've got my fingers spread apart. I got 2 over here and 1 over here currently. So I can stick my seam ripper in without hitting the other side of my the exterior of my fabric. And then we're going to rip that a little bit. I don't know that mine's ripped enough, so I might have to actually cut it a little. But I'd rather it be not cut open enough, and I can go back in with my scissors than accidentally ripping it all the way up. Because I have done that before. Not all the way up, but pretty close. Okay, then we need a piece of Peltex is what I like to use. Mine is 1 inch wide and about 3/4 of an inch. It's just whatever scrap I had laying around here. I'm going to seam rip 2 holes into this to match my magnet openings. I just eyeball it because I've done these a lot, but you could always lay your washer on top of your Peltex and seam rip like that. So then I'm going to put my male, the one with the little prong sticking out, into the flap. This part's a little tricky to get on here because it's kind of deep. And I just got that on the first try, and I don't think that's ever happened. So don't be discouraged. Okay, I'm flattening my prongs on the back after I put my washer on. And I will press this again. I'm just pressing right around the magnet so the back can be nice and smooth again. So this is it for the flap. We can go ahead and take our card slots and our flap and put them together. My flap matches up, let's see here, to the stitch lines on the outside, or the top stitch lines of the card slot panels. I know I haven't installed the other magnet yet, and that's okay. I am not ready to yet. Okay, so we have our flap laid on here, and I will baste stitch that on now. So I use a 5 stitch length for basting too. And just like that, this part is done. Okay, for the last part here, can you believe we're almost done? We just need our back panel, our 2 lining panels, our zipper, and of course the main assembly here. My zipper is 6.5 inches exactly. I did put my zipper on first, my zipper pull, and then cut it down to 6.5 inches. So I started at like 6 3/4 because I can really get this on pretty good, but you can probably, if you're using zipper tape like this, do 7.5 or do 7 inches and then cut it down after you get your pull on. This is a number 3 zipper. It's from My Handmadespace. What we're going to do is lay our zipper pull to the left, right sides down with the top of our exterior. Now I like mine to open from left to right, so that's why I have it facing the left currently. If you like it going from right to left, go ahead and flip your zipper around. So I'm going to clip this on. And we're going to baste this on at 1/8 of an inch. You can totally skip this part if you're confident with your zipper attachment. The flap does cause a little bump, so I do like to baste this on first, or else my zipper gets pretty wonky. I have used both number 3s like YKK and number 5s in zipper tape. If you use a number 5 zipper tape, you definitely are going to want to take a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you're using a YKK brand of zipper, you should be fine just like this one. But I have to say, out of all of them, I'm preferring this number 3 zipper tape. I think the tape part is a little bit wider than what your YKK or your standard number 3 zippers are. And then number 5 is just a little bit too big. I didn't take a good enough seam allowance for me personally. I think if I just took a better seam allowance, it would be okay. So now I'm putting my lining panel on top, right sides together. Also going to clip this down. Make sure your sides match up. I did trim my back panel and the lining panels to match my exterior panel earlier before I started the video. I had just a little bit extra. I don't know if that was from sloppy cutting or if it was the pattern. I'm not really sure. So now we're going to sew this with 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to move my zipper and that pull out of the way so we can keep a nice straight stitch. Okay, so this part is going to be up to you. You can open up your fabric like this and top stitch. You can open your, or fold back your fabric like normal and top stitch. You can top stitch with your flap down, or you can top stitch with your flap up. This is why I wait to attach my magnet down here though, because I like to top stitch with my flap up. So the top stitching is underneath the flap. And then when I close it, it'll actually close and snap where it's supposed to. If you put your magnet in already and you're gonna top stitch, you're going to want to make sure that you top stitch with your flap down, or else your flap will have to reach really far to put that magnet on. Okay, so my lining fabric is right side or wrong sides together with my exterior, and I am going to top stitch now. Again, I'll use a 5 stitch length and 1/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to move my pole. Just be careful when you're moving it so you don't rip it off, but it's okay if it does. You can slide it back on still. I have a little thread right here. I'm going to have to burn that one down. So I won't attach my magnet just yet either, but we are going to repeat with our back. So we'll lay our front right sides down with our back panel, matching up the sides and the top. Then we're going to take our last lining piece and also match that up. You can base stitch this on, I'm obviously skipping it. Not really on purpose, but I just got ahead of myself here. But this side isn't as big of a deal because there's not that flap hump. So I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance and a 3 stitch length. I want to move my zipper now. I can feel it starting to go wonky right there. So we'll line this up once more. Let's go ahead and turn back up to a 5 stitch length, and we're going to top stitch those 2 panels. Eek. Almost pulled my zipper off. That was a close one. All right, make sure it's nice and flat. Everything's pulled down the way you want it to be. I'm already turned up to a 5. Okay, so I'm going to zip my zipper almost all the way closed, and I'm going to hold my wallet like this right now. Well, I'm not going to hold it. I'm going to lay it down. And what I'm going to do is press hard on that magnet area. And it's going to leave just a tiny indentation. And I'm going to trace it. Then I'll grab my washer and lay it on top and make my marks. And my seam ripper. So for this, you are going to need to make sure you don't stab all the way through all your layers here. You only want that bottom layer. My holes are ripped. Some people put fray check on their holes. I don't ever. I've never had to do that. But do your thing. I got my scrap of Peltex. I'm going to cut it down to the size I want it. If you want, you can cut your Peltex into a circle shape or whatever you're most comfortable with. I'll show you how I can do the seam ripping with the washer on there. So you just hold your washer on. Try not to stab yourself on the back there. Well, those weren't very straight. I did it better when I did it myself. Okay. We'll put our snap in. And put the Peltex on the back. And then I'll put my washer on. Okay, so our washer's on, our magnet's on. It's all installed there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close my flap. I'm going to open my zipper like to the end of my flap. And we're going to put our exterior pieces right sides together. I like to start at my zipper face that zipper downwards towards the lining and clip that together. Then I'll come to the other side and make sure the zipper is facing the lining and clip that. These are all matched up. Then you can also clip your lining. Okay. So what I do for this now is I sew from here all the way around to here, and I leave this top fully, well, it's the lining bottom fully open. So I don't have a saggy lining. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to decrease to my 1/4 inch seam allowance. I think I'm out of bobbin. Okay, try that again. So I'm almost back down to my 1/4 inch already. This part of this really bothers me because I can never get it to line up just right. So I'm gonna try to hold that zipper down while see, it moved already, while my walking foot tries to climb over it. If you want, you can go ahead and backstitch over your tab there. I need one more stitch. There we go. Okay, we're going to climb back up. I'm going to try to hold that zipper right in place again. And then we're going to increase back to a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I think this pattern could be done with tabs and like zipper ends and look a little cleaner. I have not tried that though. I'm going to go ahead and cut down my seam allowance and my zipper right there. And I'm not going to trim this down. I am going to clip my corners rather. I had a little bit overhang here, so I am going to trim that overhang off and clip the other corner. I'm going to leave this tab alone and start in at my zipper again. then our zipper is open. So I'm just going to open it the rest of the way, and I'll start tucking my corners in. And pulling this right sides out. Again, I'm going to make sure I stick my hands in here and push those my fingers and push those corners out as much as I can with just my fingertips. I like to come up here and like roll those corners out. I'll grab my crochet hook and push my corners out the rest of the way. Okay. After I do a once over and make sure everything looks okay, zip our zipper shut. Just check it out. Make sure you caught your snap tab or your tab all the way, all your corners and whatnot. Just, you know, just make sure. You can open it back up. Pull that lining out. And I'm gonna fold it under. I'm gonna do about a 1/2 inch fold. Yeah, that's probably about a 1/2 inch. Make sure it's the same on both sides. Sometimes I add a tag in here while I'm doing it, but most of the time my wallets don't get any kind of tags because I don't know where to put them most of the time. And I don't want it to get in the way and be annoying when you're like trying to get your coins out. You keep grabbing the tag or something. So I stitch this shut with a 5 stitch length because, and an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, because you're not going to see it, first of all, really. And second of all, if I missed a section of the wallet or whatever, I close all my holes like this. This is an easily rippable seam. So I can stick my seam ripper in there and rip that bad boy right back open. And then I can fix it. So we're going to stuff our lining back in. Poke those holes, poke those corners down into the corner of your wallet. And give it another press. I think mine's been off too long. I like to go ahead and open it back up and press like that as well. Okie dokie. Then your wallet shuts. There we go. And that's it. you've got a little cute wallet.